Shalom, shalom, Yisrael. Here we are, another Sunday, another week. I hope that we find you guys all in peaceful shalom. I hope that y'all Shabbat was wonderful. I got my brother, Yanakotha, over here.
What's happening? Shalom, shalom.
We'll be picking up today right where we left off from last week. Let me remind y'all, we left off at Jasher chapter 11. Today we'll be picking up Jasher chapter 12. Let me go ahead and get the intro ready and we can get into this.
And shalom to praise him. We see you out there in the chat. Shalom.
Shalom.
Look at them flames lighting up the sky. Ain't never seen fire shooting up so high. Look at them flames lighting up the sky.
Look at them flames lighting up the sky. I ain't never seen fire shooting up so high. Are you listening, people, to what I'm saying? Because it sure looks to me like them niggas ain't playing.
Them niggas ain't playing.
Them niggas ain't playing. Them niggas ain't playing. Ever since they passed with civil rights, those fires have been lighting up the nights. And they say they ain't gonna stop till we all have equal rights. Looks to me like them niggas ain't playing.
Them niggas ain't playing.
Them niggas ain't playing. Them niggas ain't playing. Looks like they developed a new black pride. It even showing the way they now stride. You better look around, y'all. Can't you see what I'm saying? Sure looks to me like them niggas ain't playing.
Them niggas ain't playing.
They sure ain't. They sure ain't playing. I think they're trying to get something started.
Oh, yeah?
I'm talking about Snick and us and the Black Panther Party. Yeah. Is anyone listening to what I'm saying? Yeah, man. Because it sure looks to me like them niggas ain't playing.
Them niggas ain't playing.
Them niggas ain't playing. Them niggas ain't playing. 18 billion so far is the claim of damage done by looting and flame. Yet look around, there ain't nothing changed.
Nothing's changed.
I sure hope somebody is listening to what I'm saying. Because it sure looks to me like them niggas ain't playing.
Them niggas ain't playing.
Niggas ain't playing. Them niggas sure ain't playing. The bigots and the virtues, they just can't see. This now black generation is gonna be free. Just you try and stop them and for sure you see what I'm saying. Sure looks to me like them niggas ain't playing.
Them niggas ain't playing.
Them niggas ain't playing. Them niggas ain't playing. Now where the black man is going is anybody's guess. With his natural hair and his afro dress.
But you can believe one thing and forget the rest.
We know for sure. Them niggas ain't playing. And we ain't either.
Big country to hear.
I won't be called dead in your camp. Following these Sadducees, feds in your camp, got 501c3, bread in your camp. Look hard, you see heathens in the feds in your camp, infiltrating with the heathens in the feds in your camp. Look hard, you see heathens in the feds in your camp, infiltrating with the heathens in the feds in your camp. Look hard, you see heathens in the feds in your camp. Hey, dancing with the devil for a little bezel. They tell you to dig your own grave, you quickly grab the shovel, got to be the dumbest mother way, let me get it together. See, I ain't like none of these women submissive to devils. Cause I slap you and your mama in front of your elders. The whole 12 tribes charted so full of deception. Now how the lost 10 looked in July the oppressor. The mind full of I was describing Daniel in 7. Somebody line 9, we need us some answers. Cause I be damned if y'all see me in section with Mousy. Now Mousy, I won't be called dead in your camp. Following these Sadducees, feds in your camp, got 501c3, bread in your camp. Look hard, you see heathens in the feds in your camp, infiltrating with the heathens in the feds in your camp. Look hard, you see heathens in the feds in your camp, infiltrating with the heathens in the feds in your camp. Look hard, you see heathens in the feds in your camp. Hey, sign of Vietnam, about to drop these bombs like these devils did when they was fighting back in Vietnam, hoping that they love you. You sign up and want to be the phone just to get back to the U.S. Still be called niggas is gone. Integrated just to get put at the very bottom, and that's to make sure you do no more than just picking cotton. They crosses from the same tree and all their fruits is rotten. They tell you leave their congregation, your name getting blotted. Now who done gave 80 niggas up at low key to the kingdom, promoting doctrines of these demons and marrying these heathens. They tweaking. I won't be called dead in your camp. Following these Sadducees, beds in your camp, got 501c3 bread in your camp. Look hard, you see heathens in the feds in your camp, infiltrating with them heathens in the feds in your camp. Look hard, you see heathens in the feds in your camp, infiltrating with them heathens in the feds in your camp. Look hard, you see heathens in the feds in your camp. Hey.
Mixing is forbidden because the people are holy and the sons of Aaron are the holy of holies. Nevertheless, as you know, some of the priests and the people are mixing. They are intermarrying and thereby polluting the holy seed, and thereby polluting the holy seed, and thereby polluting the holy seed, and thereby polluting the holy seed. Dead Sea Scroll, number 4Q398.
It's God's law. You may stare and around and about. They're different for a reason. Big country to hear from.
The blood is shed, 'cause you and I, and we in here, he's the root of the tree, I'm just a limb. We some hardcore spiritual breakdown, what the scriptures is here. We nipples only, the blood is shed, 'cause you and I, and we in here, he's the root of the tree, I'm just a limb. We some hardcore spiritual breakdown, what the scriptures is here.
If you're a Negro, that means that you're a Hebrew. The chosen seed of Israel, that means no equal to you. But if you're a Hamite, peekaboo, we see you. You sold us to our oppressors on a one-way ticket to Egypt. Then heathen shipped my people away on government-funded slave ships. The evil that we had to endure. So back to nothing you get with. You fled our people to alligators.
Motherfuckers are African American.
We have to live out our curses that our stubborn ancestors gave us. Hamashiach, come save us. We trying to be on our best behavior. We the true people of the book because in your image you made us.
We nipples only, the blood is shed, 'cause you and I, and we in here, he's the root of the tree, I'm just a limb. We some hardcore spiritual breakdown, what the scriptures is here. We nipples only, the blood is shed, 'cause you and I, and we in here, he's the root of the tree, I'm just a limb. We some hardcore spiritual breakdown, what the scriptures is here.
Are you willing to give up your life like Christ versus the Philistine? Would you take the mark of the beast or place your head in the guillotine? Would you face the east every day and pray even for your enemies? Would you say amazing grace before you eat what's on your plate unto our Elohim? The meek shall inherit the earth. Those who are last are gonna be first. I'm speaking my blessings into existence, so if you hate me, it's gonna get worse. You and your family are gonna be cursed. For plotting my downfall since my rebirth. So what it is worth, the truth really hurts. For my kingdom work, I will be in birth. 144 singing world chants. You try to avoid the noise, but you can't.
We nipples only, the blood is shed, 'cause you and I, and we in here, he's the root of the tree, I'm just a limb. We some hardcore spiritual breakdown, what the scriptures is here. We nipples only, the blood is shed, 'cause you and I, and we in here, he's the root of the tree, I'm just a limb. We some hardcore spiritual breakdown, what the scriptures is here.
I live in shalom, but don't come to my home with wicked intentions. Be cause I don't be on none of that bullshit. You get many better fragments thrown into your backbones. We Negro onlys, we Negro onlys, true bloodline of shit. That mean we can't be phonies. Skin like burnt grass, hair just like wool. We slay each and every one of our opponents. Evil spirits must flee because y'all really don't want it. These are the last days. Recompense is coming. We Negro onlys. We Negro onlys.
We Negroes only. The blood is shed. Just you and I, and we in him. He's the ruler of the tree. I'm just a limb. We some hardcore spiritual brain and holy scripture to him. We Negroes only. The blood is shed. Just you and I, and we in him. He's the ruler of the tree. Big country to hear.
All right.
Shalom, shalom. This shouts out to the Negro Zone for the intro. Big country. Judah Matthias the third and them for that track. You know,
Hot fire.
hot fire. But we back at it again. And one more again at Jasher chapter 12. Now, just to give y'all a recap of what's been going on. Now, what's been going on is Abram is now returned back to his father's house. He's a full-grown man now. Now, mind you, at his birth, Nimrod told Terah, hey, I'm going to pay you for your baby so I can kill it.
Right.
Right? So Terah disobeyed that. You know, ipso facto had Abram sent off to live with Noah and Shem and Eber.
Had the servants baby
Right.
killed in his stead.
Exactly. And well, before he went to Noah and Shem, he lived in a cave with his mom. So now he's returned
And Elohim.
and Elohim. And now he's returned back to his father's house. He's destroyed his father's gods. And his father went and snitched on him to King Nimrod.
Right.
Right. So King Nimrod sent and had him brought to him before him. And he had some choice words for King Nimrod. Like, hey, look, bro, what you're doing is wrong. I don't care what you say. I don't care if you're a king or not. That's wrong. This is the reason why mankind was wiped off the earth in the beginning. So this we're picking up right where after he just get done giving the king a tongue lashing. So let's pick up in chapter 12, verse 1. This is Jasher chapter 12 and verse 1. And I read and it says this and likewise. And when the king heard the words of Abram, he ordered him to be put in a prison. And Abram was 10 days in that prison. And at the end of those days, he ordered all the kings, princes, and governors of different provinces and sages to come before him. And they sat before him. And Abram was still in the house of confinement. And the king said to the princes and the sages, have you heard what Abram, the son of Terah, has done to his father? Thus he has done to him and I ordered him to be brought before me, and thus he has spoken. His heart did not misgrieve him, neither did he stir in my presence. Now behold, he is confined in prison. Therefore, decide the judgment is what judgment is due this man who reviled the king, who spoke and did all this that you have heard. And they answered the king, saying, the man who reviles the king should be hanged on a tree.
Boy,
Interesting.
something about black folks being hung on a tree.
Yeah, that just seems to keep filing us.
Oh,
All right. And it says, having done all this that he said, and having despised our Elohims, he must therefore be burned to death. For this is the law in this manner.
hanging and burning.
Sound familiar, right? Interesting.
Sound like Jim Crow.
Verse 6. If it pleases the king to do this, let him order his servants to kindle a fire both day and night in your brick furnace. Then we will cast this man into it. And the king did so. And he commanded his servants that they should prepare a fire for 3 days and 3 nights in the king's furnace, that is in Kazadim. And the king ordered them to take Abram from prison and bring him out to be burned. And all the king's servants, princes, Adonim, governors, judges, and all inhabitants of the land, about 900,000 men, stood opposite of the furnace to see Abram. Whew. Who is this man? Who is this man to dare to speak his bold mind directly to the king as if he ain't the king? Who is this man? And all the women and little ones crowded upon the roofs and the towers to see what was doing with Abram. And they stood together at a distance, and there was not a man left that did not come on that day to behold the scene. Everybody showed up.
The city was there.
Everybody showed up. And when Abram was come, the conjurers of the king and the sages saw Abram, and they cried out to the king, saying, "Our sovereign Adonai, surely this is the man whom we know to have been the child at whose birth the great star swallowed the 4 stars, which we declared to the king now 50 years since." Uh-oh.
Boy, they remember that, boy.
As soon as they seen it, they was like, that's him. That's him. He's 50 years old now, but that's him. It says, verse 10, "And behold, now his father has also transgressed your commands and mocked you by bringing you another child which you did kill." And when the king heard their words, he was exceedingly wroth and ordered Terah to be brought out before him. And the king said, "Have you heard what the conjurers have said or spoken? Now tell me truly, how did you? And if you shall, how did you? And if you shall speak truth, you shall be acquitted." Seeing that the king's anger was so much kindled, Terah said to the king, "My Adonai, my king, you have heard the truth, and what the sages have spoken is right." And the king said, "How could you do this thing, to transgress my orders and not give me a child that you did not, and to give me a child that you did not beget, and to take value for him?" And Terah answered the king, "Because my tender feelings were excited for my son at the time, and he took a son of my handmaid, and I brought him to the king." And the king said, "Who advised you to do this? Tell me, do not hide aught from me, then you shall not die." And Terah was greatly afraid in the king's presence, and he said to the king, "It was Haran, my eldest son." He blamed it on his oldest son, Haran.
Oh, man.
Now he decided to do this within his own self, but he blamed it on his eldest son, Haran, who advised me to do this. And Haran was in those days that Abram was born 2 and 30 years old. So he was 32. He was a younger brother. And Haran did not advise his father to do anything. For Terah said this to the king in order to deliver his soul from the king, for he feared greatly. And the king said to Terah, "Haran, your son, who advised you to do this, shall die through fire with Abram. For the sentence of death is upon him for having rebelled against the king's desire to do this thing." And Haran, at the time, felt inclined to follow the ways of Abram, but he kept it within himself. And Haran said in his heart, "Behold, now the king has seized Abram on the account of the things Abram did, and it shall come to pass that if Abram prevail over the king, I will follow him. But if the king prevail, I will go after the king." So he wasn't all the way in. He tried to straddle the fence. He was like, "Look, I believe what Abram's saying, but if the king prevail over him, then I'm gonna rock with this because I'm not about to die." He wasn't all in like Abram was.
Right. Verse 20.
Verse 20. And when Terah had spoken this to the king concerning Haran his son, the king ordered Haran to be seized with Abram. And they brought them both, Abram and Haran his brother, and cast them into the fire. Woo. And all the inhabitants of the land, and the king's servants, and the princes, and all the women and the little ones who were there, standing that day over them. And the king's servants took Abram and his brother, and they stripped them of their clothes, except their lower garments, which was upon them. Stripped them all the way down to their drawers. And they bound their hands and their feet with linen cords. And the servants of the king lifted them up and cast them both into the furnace. See, this is a story that most people don't know about what happened with Abram. This is in his younger days. And Yahuwah, verse 24. And Yahuwah loved Abram, and he had compassion over him. And Yahuwah came down and delivered Abram from the fire, and he was not burned. But all the cords which they bound him were burned, while Abram remained and walked about in the fire. And Haran died when they had cast him into the fire, and he was burned to ashes, for his heart was not perfect with Yahuwah. He didn't decide with all his heart and being to walk after the ways of Yahuwah. So he was perished when it came time for him to be cast in. And those men who cast him into the fire, the flame of the fire spread over them, and they were burned. The 12 men of them died. And Abram walked in the midst of the fire 3 days and 3 nights. And all the servants of the king saw him walking in the fire. And they came and told the king, saying, Behold, we have seen Abram walking about in the midst of the fire.
Boy, talk
For
about
3 days.
sights to behold.
We have seen Abram walking about in the midst of the fire, and even the lower garments which are upon him are not burned, but the cord which he was bound is burned. And when the king heard the words, his heart fainted. Wait a minute. You talking about the dude we threw in the fire 3 days ago? He's still walking around in the fire. And when the king heard the words, his heart fainted, and he would not believe them. So he sent other faithful princes to see this matter. And they went and they saw it, and they told it to the king. And the king rose to go and see it. He still didn't believe him. He sent his most trusted advisors to go see on the matter. And they came back and told him the same thing. He was like, nah, I got to see this for my own self, with my own 2 eyes. Somebody we done throw it in the fire, he's still living. Let me see it for myself. Excuse me. How do you bring it down? All right. And Abram walked in the midst 3 days and 3 nights, and the servants of the king saw him in the fire, and they came and they told the king. And the king, saying, Behold, we have seen Abram walking in the midst of the fire, and even the lower garments which were upon him are not burned, but the cord which we bound were burned. And when the king heard the words, his heart fainted, and he would not believe it. So he sent other faithful princes to see the matter. And when they saw it, they told it to the king. And the king rose to see the matter. And he saw Abram walking to and fro in the midst of the fire. He seen it with his own 2 eyes. Abram walking to and fro in the fire. And he saw Haran's burned body. And the king wondered greatly. And the king ordered Abram to be taken out from the fire. And his servants approached to take him out, and they could not, for the fire was around about, and the flame ascending toward them from the furnace. And the king's servants fled from him, and the king rebuked them, and make haste, and bring Abram out of the fire, and you shall not die. And the servants of the king again tried to approach to bring Abram out of the flames. And the flames came upon them and burned their faces, so that 8 of them died. And when the king saw that his servants could not approach the fire, lest they should be burned, the king called to Ab, servant of Elohim, who's in the heaven, go forth from the midst of the fire and come hither before me. And Ab hearkened to the words of the king. And he went forth from the fire. And he came and he stood before the king. And Abram came out of the king. And all the servants saw Abram coming before the king with his lower garments upon him, for they were not burned, but the cord which they had bound him were burned. And the king said to Abram, how is it that you were not burned in the fire? And Abram said to the king, the Elohim of heaven and earth, in whom I trust, who has all in his power. He delivered me from the fire in which you did cast me. And Haran, the brother of Abram, was burned to ashes, and they sought for his body, and they found it consumed. And Haran was 82 years old, and he died in the fires of Kazadin. And the king, princes, and inhabitants of the land, seeing Abram was delivered from the fire, they came and they bowed down to Abram. Nimrod himself bent the knee to Abram. And all did the princes and kings of the kingdom. And Abram said to them, do not bow down to me, but bow down to Elohim of the world, who made you, and serve him, and go in his ways. For it is he who delivered me from this fire. And it is he who created the souls in the ruach, or the spirits of all men, formed man in his mother's womb, and brought him forth into the world. It is he who will deliver those who trust in him from all pain. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
And this thing seemed very wonderful in the eyes of the king and all the princes. And Abram was saved from the fire, and that Haran had burned. And the king gave Abram many presents, and he gave him his 2 head servants from the king's house, in the name of one Onai, and the other was Eleazar. Now you always wondered how Abram ended up with that servant Eleazar and Onai. That's how he ended up with Onai and Eleazar. Nimrod gave them, they were the chief servants in his house, and he gave them to Abram. And all the kings and princes and servants gave Abram many gifts of silver and gold and pearl, and the kings and his princes sent him away, and he went in peace. And Abram went forth from the king in peace, and many of the king's servants followed him. Many of the king's servants followed him. And about 300 men joined him. Wow.
Had his own little miniature army.
Wow. Now you know how he was able to go and rescue Lot when they said he took up his servants. Well, he had 300 men that left the house of Nimrod to follow Abram. And Abram returned on that day and went, verse 42. And Abram returned on that day and went to his father's house, and he and the men that followed him. And Abram served Yahuwah Elohim all the days of his life. And he walked in his ways, and he followed his Torah. From that day forward, Abram inclined the hearts of the sons of men to serve Yahuwah. And at that time, Nachor and Abram took unto themselves women, and the daughters of their brother Haran. The woman of Nachor was Mikah, and the name of Abram's woman was Sarai. And Sarai, the woman of Abram, was barren. She had no offspring in those days. And at the expiration of 2 years from Abram's going out of the fire, that is in the 52nd year of his life, behold, Nimrod sat in Babel upon the throne, and the king fell asleep and dreamed. And he was standing with his troops and a host in a valley opposite of the king's furnace. And he lifted up his eyes and saw a man in the likeness of Abram coming forth, woo, from the furnace. And that he came and stood before the king with his drawn sword, and then sprang to the king with his sword.
Mm.
And when the king fled from the man, for he was afraid, while he was running, the man threw an egg upon the head of the king, and the egg became a great river. And the king dreamed that all his troops sank in the river and died. And the king took flight with 3 men who were before him, and he escaped. And the king looked at these men, and they were clothed in princely dresses as garments of a king, and had the appearance of majesties of kings. And while they were running, the river again turned into an egg before the king, and there came forth from the egg a young bird, which came before the king, and flew at its head, and plucked out the king's eye. And the king was grieved at this sight, and he awoke out of his sleep, and his ruach was agitated, and he felt a great terror. In the morning the king rose from his couch in fear, and he ordered all the wise men and magicians to come before him. And when the king related his dream to them, the wise servants of the king, whose name was Anuku, answered. And he answered the king, saying, "This is nothing else but the evil of Abram and his seed, which will spring up against my Adonai and king in the latter days. Behold, the day will come when Abram and his seed and the children of his household will war with my king, and they will smite all the king's hosts and troops. And as to what you have said concerning the 3 men which you did see like unto yourself, which did escape, this means that that only you will escape with 3 kings from the 3 king with the 3 kings from the kings of the earth, who will be with you in battle." Okay, so he's relating to him. He said, okay, you're going to have 3 allies in battle. These 3 kings is going to help you, and they're going to help you escape. All right.
Verse 55.
Verse 55. "In that which you saw of the river, which turned to an egg as at the first, and the young bird plucking out your eye, that means nothing else but the seed of Abram, which will slay the king in the latter days. This is my king's dream, and this is his interpretation. And the dream is true, and the interpretation which your servant has given you is right. Now, therefore, my king, surely you know that it is now 52 years since your sages saw this at the birth of Abram. And if my king will suffer Abram to live in the earth, it will be to the injury of my Adonai and king for all the days that Abram lives. Neither you nor your kingdom will be established. For this was known formerly at his birth." They reminded him now, remember what we told you about this dude when he was born, right? This is what was known formerly at his birth. "And why will my king not slay him, that his evil may be kept from you in the latter days?" And Nimrod hearkened to the voice of Anaku, and he sent some of his servants in secret to go and seize Abram and bring him before the king to suffer death. And Eleazar, Abram's servant, whom the king had given him, was at that time in the presence of the king, and heard what Anaku had advised the king, and what the king had said to cause Abram's death. And Eleazar said to Abram, "Hasten and rise up and save your soul, that you might not die through the hands of the king. For thus did he see in a dream concerning you, and thus did Anaku interpret it, and thus did Anaku advise the king concerning you." He told him the whole thing. Now that's what's up. He was a real one.
That's,
He was a real
that's a
one.
right hand man for real.
All right. Verse 61. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Eleazar, and Abram hastened and ran to the safety, ran for safety to the house of Noah and his son Shem, and he concealed himself there, and he found a place of safety. Why did he find a place of safety there? Because they knew better. They knew better to come to their grandfather with that foolishness. With that foolishness. They knew better. They knew they couldn't even stand in the presence of Noah or Shem with that foolishness. Continue.
Man for safety at the house of Noah.
Mm-hmm.
Son of Shem.
In the house of Noah and the son of Shem, and he was concealed there, and found a place of safety. And the king's servant came to Abram's house to seek him, but they could not find him. And they searched throughout the country, and he was not found. And they went and they searched in every direction, and he was not to be met. And when the king's servants could not find Abram, they returned to the king. And the king's anger was against Abram, and the king's anger against Abram was still, as they did not find him. And the king drove from his mind this matter concerning Abram. In other words, he just decided to forget all about it. You know, he not here no more, so I ain't got to worry about it. Out of sight, out of mind. And Abram said to his father, do you not know that the king thinks to slay me and to annihilate my name from the earth by the advice of this wicked counselor? Now, whom have you here, and have you to this land? Arise, let us go together to the land of Canaan, that we might be delivered from his hand, lest you perish also through him in the latter day. Do you not know, or have not heard, that it is not through love that Nimrod gives you all this honor, but it's only for his benefit that he bestows all this good upon you? If he do unto you greater good than this, surely these are only vanities of this world. For wealth and riches cannot avail in the day of the wrath and anger. Now, therefore, hearken to my voice, and let us arise and go to the land of Canaan, out of the reach of the injury of Nimrod, and serve Yahuwah, who created you in the earth, and it will be well with you, and cast away all vain things which you pursue. And Abram ceased to speak. And when it says, when Noah and his son Shem answered Terah, saying, true is the word of Abram. True is the word which Abram has said to you. And Terah hearkened to the voice of Abram. And Terah did all that Abram said, for this was from Yahuwah, that the king should not cause Abram's death. Now, Terah was there. He knew where his son was. He knew that he was at Noah's house. So he's sitting there talking with his son. And Noah tells him, listen to your son. Now this is their grandfather. This is their grandfather he's talking to. Listen to him. And Shem said it too. Shem was his grandfather too. Listen to him and do this.
All right. Moving on to chapter 13, Israel. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, the wife of his son Abram, and all the souls of his household, and went with them from Kasdim to go to the land of Canaan. And when they came as far as the land of Haran, they remained there, for it was exceedingly good land for pasture, and a sufficient extent for those who accompanied them. And the people of the land of Haran saw that Abram was good and upright with Elohim and men, and that Yahuwah his Elohim was with him. And some of the people of the land of Haran came and joined Abram, and he taught them the instruction of Elohim and his ways. And these men remained with Abram in his house, and they adhered to him. So no matter where Abram was going, he was picking up more and more people that were attaching to him.
Because he followed the true way of Yahuwah.
Right. And all the while he was teaching them.
See, these are called the Noahide laws.
Right.
This is the law which Noah gave unto their sons. So he learned this from Noah.
Verse 3. And Abraham remained in the land 3 years. And at the expiration of 3 years, Yahuwah appeared to Abraham and said to him, I am Yahuwah who brought thee forth from Kasdim and delivered thee from the hands of all thine enemies. And now, therefore, if thou wilt hearken to my voice and keep my commandments, my statutes, and my laws, my Torah, then will I cause thy enemies to fall before thee, and I will multiply thy seed like the stars of the Shamayim, and I will send my blessing upon all the works of thy hands.
Hallelujah.
And thou shalt lack nothing. Arise now, take thy wife and all belonging to thee, and go to the land of Canaan and remain there. And I will there be unto thee for a Elohim, and I will bless thee. And Abram rose and took his wife and all belonging to him, and he went to the land of Canaan, as Yahuwah had told him. And Abram was 50 years old when he went from Haran. And Abram came to the land of Canaan and dwelt in the midst of the city. And he there pitched his tent amongst the children of Canaan, inhabitants of the land. And Yahuwah appeared to Abram when he came to the land of Canaan, and said to him, This is the land which I give unto thee, and to thy seed after thee forever. And I will make thy seed like the stars of the Shamayim, and I will give unto thee thy seed for an inheritance all the lands which thou seest. Again, we talking about the land of Canaan.
Mm-hmm.
Forever. Not until we go into slavery.
Forever.
Forever. Verse 8. And Abram built an altar in the place where Elohim had spoken to him. And Abram there called upon the name of Yahuwah. At that time, at the end of 3 years of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, in the year Noah died, and that year Noah died, which was the 58th year of the life of Abram. And all the days that Noah lived were 950 years, and he died. Verse 10. And Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, he, his wife, and all belonging to him, and all those that accompanied him, together with those that joined him from the people of the land. But Nahor, Abram's brother, and Terah, his father, and Lot, the son of Haran, and all belonging to them, dwelt in Haran. In the 50th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, the people of Sodom and Gomorrah and all the cities of the plain revolted from the power of Kedorlaomer, king of Elam. Hey, y'all gonna have to forgive me on some of these names, boy. For all the kings of the city of the plain had served Kedorlaomer for 12 years and given him a yearly tax. But in those days, in the 13th year, they rebelled against them. Verse 12. And in the 10th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, there was a war between Nimrod, king of Shinar, and Kedorlaomer, king of Elam. And Nimrod came to fight with Kedorlaomer and to subdue him. For Kedorlaomer was at that time one of the princes of the host of Nimrod. And when all the people at the tower were dispersed, and those that remained were also scattered upon the face of the earth. Kedorlaomer went to the land of Elam and reigned over it, and rebelled against his Adonai. And in those days, when Nimrod saw that the cities of the plain had rebelled, he came with pride and anger to war with Kedorlaomer. And Nimrod assembled all his princes and subjects, about 700,000 men, and went against Kedorlaomer. And Kedorlaomer went out to meet him with 5,000 men. And they prepared for battle in the valley of Babel, which is between Elam and Shinar. Verse 15. And all those kings fought there, and Nimrod and his people were smitten before the people of Kedorlaomer. And there fell from Nimrod's men about 600,000. And Mardon, the king's son, fell amongst them. And Nimrod fled and returned in shame and disgrace to his land. And he was under subjection to Kedorlaomer for a long time. And Kedorlaomer returned to his land and sent princes of his host to the kings that dwelt around him, to Arioch, king of Eleazar, whatever, and to Tidal, king of Gihon, whatever, and made a covenant with them, and they were all obedient to his commands. Verse 17. And it was in the 50th year of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, which is the 70th year of the life of Abram. And Elohim appeared to Abram in that year, and he said to him, I am Yahuwah, who brought thee out from Kasdim to give thee this land for an inheritance. Now therefore walk before me and be perfect, and keep my commands. For to thee and to thy seed I will give this land for an inheritance, from the river Mizraim unto the great river Euphrates. Don't get no more specific than that.
I mean, he laid it out himself exactly what the boundaries are.
Just saying. From one river to the other. Verse 19. And thou shalt come to thy fathers in peace and in a good age. And the fourth generation shall return here in this land and shall inherit it forever. And Abram built an altar, and he called upon the name of Yahuwah, who appeared to him, and he brought up sacrifices upon the altar to Yahuwah. Verse 20. And at that time Abram returned and went to Haran to see his father and mother and his father's household. And Abram and his wife and all belonging to him returned to Haran. And Abram dwelt in Haran 5 years. Take some long ass vacations.
Long vacations.
Verse 21. And many of the people of Haran, about 72 men, followed Abram. And Abram taught them the instruction of Yahuwah and his ways, and he taught them to know Yahuwah. In those days Yahuwah appeared to Abram in Haran, and he said to him, Behold, I spoke unto thee these 20 years back, saying, Go forth from thy land, from thy birthplace, and from thy father's house, to the land which I have shown thee, to give it to thee and to thy children. For there in that land will I bless thee, and make thee a great nation, and make thy name great, and in thee shall the families of the earth be blessed. Now therefore arise, go forth from this place, thou, thy wife, and all belonging to thee. Also everyone born in thy house, and all the souls that hast made in Haran, and bring them out with thee from here, and rise to return to the land of Canaan. Verse 25. And Abram arose and took his wife Sarai, and all belonging to him, and all that were born to him in his house, and all the souls which they had made in Haran, and they came out to go to the land of Canaan. And Abram went and returned to the land of Canaan, according to the word of Yahuwah. And Lot, the son of his brother Haran, went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he went forth from Haran to return to the land of Canaan. And he came to the land of Canaan, according to the word of Yahuwah, to Abram. And he pitched his tent, his sukkot, and he dwelt in the plain of Mamre. And with him was Lot, his brother's son, and all belonging to him. And Yahuwah again appeared to Abram and said, to thy seed will I give this land. And he there built an altar to Yahuwah who appeared to him, which is still to this day in the plains of Mamre.
All right, hallelujah. All right, we're going into
Chapter 14.
14, verse 1. In those days, there was in the land of Shinar a wise man who had understanding and all wisdom and all beautiful appearance, but he was poor and indignant. His name was Rikayan, and he was hard set to support himself. He resolved to go to Mizraim, to Osiris, the son of Anamiyim, the king of Mizraim, to show the king his wisdom, for perhaps he might find a place or find grace in his sight to raise him up and give him maintenance. And Rikayon did so. And when Rikayan came to Mizraim, he asked the inhabitants of Mizraim concerning the king, and the inhabitants of Mizraim told him the customs of the king of Mizraim. For it was then the custom of the king of Mizraim that he went from his royal palace and was seen abroad only one day in the year. And after that, the king would return to his palace and remain there. And on the day when the king went forth and he passed judgment in the land, and everyone having a suit came before the king on that day to obtain his request. So when Rikayan heard the customs of Mizraim, that he could not come into the presence of the king, he grieved greatly and was very sorrowful. And in the evening, Rikayan went out and he found a house in the ruins, formerly a bakehouse in Mizraim. And he abode there all night in the bitterness of his soul, and he pinched with anger, with hunger, my bad, and slept. Sleep was removed from his eyes. In other words, he was so hungry he couldn't eat, he couldn't sleep. He was so hungry. That boy had the stomach pains, And so Rikayan considered within himself what he should do in town until the king made his appearance, and how he might maintain himself there. And he arose in the morning and he walked about, and he met in his way those who sold vegetables and various sorts of seeds with which they supplied the inhabitants. And Rikayan wished to do the same in order to get maintenance in the city. But he was unacquainted with the custom of the people. See, this is how they took advantage of him. You see what I'm saying? And he wasn't acquainted with the customs of the people. And he was like a blind man among them. He didn't know nothing. And he went and he obtained some vegetables to sell for his support. And all rabble assembled. Then a rabble assembled around about him and ridiculed him and took his vegetables from him. And they left him with nothing. And he arose there in bitterness of the soul. And he went sighing to the bakehouse in which he had remained all night before. And he slept there the second night. On that night again, He reasoned within himself how he could save himself from starvation, and he devised a scheme how to act. He rose up in the morning and acted what is it? Ingeniously. And he went and he hired 30 strong men of the rabble, and carrying their war instruments in their hands, he led them to the top of the Mitzri sepulchre, and he placed them there. Basically, this is like a food storage place, and basically, it was also a temple, right? And he commanded them, saying this: "Thus says the king, strengthen yourselves and be valiant men, and let no man be buried." Oh, okay, yeah. So this is where they buried the dead. Right. So he said, look, let no man be buried here until 200 pieces of silver be given. He started charging them to bury their dead. This is where it started. He started this way back when. 200 pieces of silver be given, and then they may be buried. Those men did according to the order of Rikayan and to the people of Mizraim the whole of that year.
Boy got rich.
And in 8 months' time, Rikayan and his men gathered great riches of silver and gold. And Rikayan took the great quantity of the horses and other animals, and he hired more men, and he gave them horses that they remained and they remained with him. And when the year came around at the time, and the king went forth to the town, all the inhabitants of Mizraim assembled together to speak with him concerning the work of Rekayan. Now, mind you, all he wanted to do was talk to the king, but he couldn't get an audience. And he's a nobody, so he's got to wait in this long line to even be heard. So how am I going to get an audience? I'm going to piss off all of Mizraim. I'm going to charge you. So it says, and the year came, when the year came around, that at the time that the king went forth from the town, all the inhabitants of Mizraim assembled together to speak to him concerning the work of Rikayan and his men. And the king went forth on the appointed day, and all the Mizraim came before him and cried unto him, saying, "May the king live forever. What is this thing you do in the town to your servants, not to suffer the dead body to be buried until much silver and gold is given? Was there ever the like unto this done in the whole of the earth from the days of former kings, yea, even from the days of Adam unto this day, that the dead should not be buried only for a set price?" What? So verse 19, we know it to be the custom of the kings to take a yearly tax from the living, but you do not only do this, but from the dead you also exact the tax day by day. It's like, man, you're not only taxing us in our lifetime, but you're taxing us when we're dead. This is crazy. Sound familiar? And when the king heard all that they had spoken, he was very wroth, and his anger burned within him at this affair, for he had known nothing of it. And the king said, "Who and where is he that dares to do this wicked thing in my land without my command? Surely you will tell me." And they told him all the works of Rikayan and his men, and the king's anger was aroused. And he ordered Rikayan and his men to be brought before him. And Rikayan took 1,000 children, sons and daughters, clothed them in silk and embroidery. And he set up horses, and he sent them to the king by means of his men. And he also took great quantities of silver and gold and precious stones, and a strong and beautiful horse as the present to the king, with which he came before the king, bowed down to the earth before him. And the king and his servants and all the inhabitants of Mizraim wondered at the works of Rikayan. And they saw that his riches and the present that he had brought to the king, and that they greatly pleased the king, and he wondered at it. And when Rikayan sat before him, the king, he asked him concerning all his works, And Rikayan spoke all the words wisely before the king and his servants and all the inhabitants of Mizraim. He chose his words very carefully. And when the king heard the words of Rikayan and his wisdom, Rikayan found grace in the sight, and he was met with grace and kindness from all the servants of the king and from all the inhabitants of Mizraim on the account of his wisdom and excellent speeches.
That boy could spin some yarn.
Why? Hey, he can sell salt to a slug, I'm telling you. So from that time, they loved him exceedingly. And the king answered and said to Rikayan, you shall no more be called Rikayan, but Pharaoh. Uh-oh.
There you go.
This is the first time you actually seen the name Pharaoh ever being used. Okay. So
it was a name, not a title.
Right. And he wasn't even really a Mizraite.
Boy, stupid.
He wasn't even really a Mizraite. So he moved there. So he says, but Pharaoh and shall be your name, since you did exact a tax from the dead. And he called his name Pharaoh. And the king and his subjects loved Rikayan for his wisdom, and they consulted with all the inhabitants of Mizraim to make him perfect under the king. And all the inhabitants of Mizraim and all its wise men did so. And it was made a law in Mizraim. And they made Mikayan Pharaoh perfect under Osiris, the king of Mizraim. Yeah, I don't know if y'all recognizing some of these names, but it says here in these scriptures that Osiris and Abraham lived around the same time. Right. And yeah.
That was the first Pharaoh.
Exactly. Rikayan was the first Pharaoh, and he governed Mizraim, daily administering justice to the whole city. But Osiris was the king who would judge the people of the land one day in the year when he went out to make his appearance. And Rikayan, Pharaoh, cunningly usurped the government of Mizraim, and he exacted a tax from all the inhabitants of Mizraim, and all the inhabitants of Mizraim greatly loved him. He was taxing them, and they loved him for it. This is how he bamboozled and hustled all of Mizraim.
That's how he took over the land.
And all the inhabitants of Mizraim greatly loved Rikayan Pharaoh, and they made a decree that every king that should reign over them and their seed in Mizraim shall be called Pharaoh. Therefore, all the kings that reigned in Mizraim from that time forward were called Pharaoh unto this day. Interesting.
Say that. All right. 2 more chapters to go. Chapter 15. And in that year, there was a heavy famine throughout the land of Canaan, and the inhabitants of the land could not remain on account of the famine, for it was very grievous. And Abram and all belonging to him rose and went down into Mizraim on account of the famine. And when they were at the brook Mizraim, they remained there some time to rest from the fatigue of the road. Verse 3. And Abram and Sarai were walking at the border of the brook of Mizraim, and Abram beheld his wife Sarai, that she was very beautiful. And Abram said to his wife Sarai, since Elohim has created thee with such a beautiful countenance, I am afraid of the Mizraites, lest they should slay me and take thee away, for fear of Elohim is not in these places. Surely then thou shalt do this, say thou art my sister, to all that may ask thee, in order that it may be well with me, and that we may live and not be put to death. Verse 6. And Abram commanded the same to all those that came with him to Mizraim on account of the famine. Also his nephew Lot he commanded, saying, if the Mizrahites ask thee concerning Sarai, say she is the sister of Abram. And yet with all these orders, Abram did not put confidence in them, but he took Sarai and placed her in the chest and concealed it amongst their vessels. For Abram was greatly concerned about Sarai on account of the wickedness of the Mizrahites. Our ancestor was fine.
It's so funny. He tried to hide her in a chest.
Fine.
That's crazy.
Verse 8. And Abram and all belonging to him rose up from the brook Mizraim and came to Mizraim. And they had scarcely entered the gates of the city when the guards stood up to them, saying, give tithe to the king from what you have, and then you may come into the town. And Abram and those that were with him did so. And Abram with the people that were with him came to Mizraim. And when they came, they brought the chest in which Sarai was concealed, and the Mizrahites saw the chest. And the king's servants approached Abram, saying, what hast thou here in this chest, which we have not seen? Now open thou chest, and give tithe to the king of all that it contains. And Abram said, this chest I will not open, but all you demand upon it I will give. And Pharaoh's officers answered Abram, saying, it is a chest of precious stones. Give us the tenth thereof. And Abram said, all that you desire I will give, but you must not open the chest. Verse 13. And the king's officers pressed Abram, and they reached the chest and opened it with force. And they saw, and behold, a beautiful woman was in the chest. And when the officers of the king beheld Sarai, they were struck with admiration at her beauty. And all the princes and servants of Pharaoh assembled to see Sarai, for she was very beautiful.
She was bad.
Helen of Troy, my ass.
Right.
And the king's officers ran and told Pharaoh all that they had seen.
They said, who is this woman?
Right. And they praised Sarai to the king. And Pharaoh ordered her to be brought. And the woman came before the king. And Pharaoh beheld Sarai, and she pleased him exceedingly.
I bet.
Right.
I bet.
Ooh. And he was struck with her beauty. And the king rejoiced greatly on her account, and made presents to those who brought him the tidings concerning her. And the woman was then brought to Pharaoh's house, and Abram grieved on account of his wife, and he prayed to Yahuwah to deliver her from the hands of Pharaoh. And Sarai also prayed at that time, and said, O Yahuwah Elohim, thou didst tell my Adonai Abram to go forth from this land and from his father's house to the land of Canaan, and thou didst promise to do well with him if he would perform thy commands. Now behold, we have done that which thou did command us, and we left our land and our families, and we went to a strange land, into a people whom we have not known before. And we came to this land to avoid the famine, and this evil accident has befallen me. Now therefore, O Yahuwah Elohim, deliver us and save us from the hand of this oppressor, and do well with me for the sake of thy mercy. Verse 19. And Yahuwah hearkened to the voice of Sarai, and Yahuwah sent an angel to deliver Sarai from the power of Pharaoh. And the king came and sat before Sarai, and behold, an angel of Yahuwah was standing over them. And he appeared to Sarai and said to her, do not fear, for Yahuwah has heard thy prayer. And the king approached Sarai and said to her, what is that man to thee who brought thee hither? And she said, He is my brother. And the king said, It is incumbent upon us to make him great, to elevate him, and to do unto him all the good which thou shalt command us. And at that time the king sent to Abram silver and gold and precious stones in abundance, together with cattle, men servants, and maid servants. And the king ordered Abram to be brought, and he sat in the court of the king's house. And the king greatly exalted Abram on that night. Verse 23. And the king approached to speak to Sarai, and he reached out his hand to touch her, when the angel smote him heavily. And he was terrified.
Look, he tried to touch her. He wasn't even allowed to. He went to hit one of these on her, and the angel smacked him so hard. He was so like, what? Oh, yeah, no. Oh, no.
The angel smacked him, and he was terrified, and he refrained from reaching to her. And when the king came near to Sarai, the angel smote him, smacked him to the ground, smote him to the ground, and acted thus to him the whole night.
He got company and everything. He got all these people there. Every time he tried to even speak to her, he getting backhanded to the ground.
The whole night, spent the whole night getting smacked to the ground. And the king was terrified. Verse 25. And the king on that night smote heavily all the servants of the king and his whole household on account of Sarai. And there was a great lamentation that night amongst the people of Pharaoh's house. So Pharaoh's getting smacked to the ground by the angel, getting up and smacking around his servants to the ground because he keep getting smacked to the ground.
It's a whole mess.
Verse 26 is beautiful. And Pharaoh, seeing the evil that befell him, said, Surely on account of this woman has this thing happened to me. And he removed himself at some distance from her and spoke pleasing words to her. And the king said to Sarai, Tell me, I pray thee, concerning the man with whom thou camest here. And Sarai said, This man is my husband. And I said to thee that he was my brother, for I was afraid lest thou should put him to death through wickedness. And the king kept away from Sarai, and the plagues of the angel of Yahuwah ceased from him and his household. And Pharaoh knew that he was smitten on account of Sarai, and the king was greatly astonished at this. And in the morning the king called for Abram and said to him, What is this thou hast done to me? Why did thou say, She is my sister, owing to which I took her unto me for a wife? And this heavy plague has therefore came upon me and my household. Now therefore, here is thy wife, take her and go from our land, lest we all die on her account. And Pharaoh took more cattle, men servants and maid servants, and silver and gold to give to Abram, and he returned unto him Sarai, his wife. And the king took a maiden whom he begat by his concubines, and he gave her to Sarai for a handmaid. Introducing Hagar. And now you will understand why further on
There was some beef.
Hagar had the beef that she had because of her own blood lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Right. All right.
32.
Yeah. And the king said to his daughter, It is better for thee, my daughter, to be a handmaid in this man's house than to be a mistress in my house, after we have beheld the evil that befell us on account of this woman. And Abram arose, and he and all belonging to him went away from Mizraim, and Pharaoh ordered some of his men to accompany him, and all that went with him. And Abram returned to the land of Canaan, to the place where he had made the altar, where he had at first had pitched his sukkot. And Lot, the son of Haran, Abram's brother, had a heavy stock of cattle, flocks, and herds and tents, for Elohim was bountiful to them on account of Abram. And when Abram was dwelling in the land, the herdsmen of Lot quarreled with the herdsmen of Abram, for their property was too great for them to remain together in the land, and the land could not bear them on account of their cattle. And when Abram's herdsmen went to feed their flock, they would not go into the fields of the people of the land, but the cattle of Lot's herdsmen did otherwise, for they were suffered to feed in the fields of the people of the land. And the people of the land saw this occurrence daily, and they came to Abram and quarreled with him on account of Lot's herdsmen. And Abram said to Lot, "What is this thou art doing to me, to make me despicable to the inhabitants of the land, that thou orderest thy herdsmen to feed thy cattle in the fields of other people? Dost thou not know that I am a stranger in this land, amongst the children of Canaan? Why wilt thou do this unto me?"
He said, "Man, look, we strangers here.
Right.
We just got here. We over here causing problems, bro. I'm trying to be laying low right now. You causing issues, bro."
Verse 40. And Abram quarreled daily with Lot on account of this, but Lot would not listen to Abram, and he continued to do the same. And the inhabitants of the land came and told Abram, and Abram said to Lot, "How long wilt thou be to me for a stumbling block with the inhabitants of the land? Now I beseech thee, let there be no more quarreling between us, for we are kinsmen. But I pray thee, separate from me. Go and choose a place where thou may dwell with thy cattle and all belonging to thee, but keep thyself at a distance from me, thou and thy household." He said, "Look, the beef is dead between us,
Right.
but you
gotta go, bro. You gotta go. Take you and everybody with you, and just roll. We ain't going. It ain't no hard feelings. Just go.
Verse 43. And be not afraid in going from me, for if anyone do an injury to thee, let me know, and I will avenge thy cause from him. Only remove from me." So you ain't got to be scared on heading out on your own.
Right.
Anybody mess with you, let me know. I got your back.
I got you, but
you
right
gotta
here,
go.
Yeah, you disrespecting my house right now.
And when Abram had spoken all these words to Lot, then Lot arose and lifted up his eyes towards the plain of Jordan. The plain of Jordan. And he saw that the whole of this place was well watered and good for man, as well as affording pasture for the cattle. And Lot went from Abram to that place, and he there pitched his sukkot, and he dwelt in Sodom. And they were separated from each other. And Abram dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is in Hebron. And he pitched his sukkot there, and Abram remained in that place many years. Last chapter, Israel.
All right. Chapter 16, verse 1. At the time that Kedorlaomer, the king of Elam, sent to all the neighboring kings, to Nimrod and to the king of Shinar, who was then under the power, and to Tito, the king of the nations, and to Arioch, the king of Elakar, and to whom he cut a covenant, saying, "Come up to me and assist me, that we might smite all the towns of Sodom, and it is an inhabitants, for they have rebelled against me these 13 years." Remember, he still had out with these guys because they ain't been paying their bills.
Petty.
They ain't been paying their stuff. So he was like, "Nah, we're gonna go to Sodom, we're gonna square them away." It says, and these four kings went up with all their camp, about 800,000 men. And they went as they were, and they smote every man they found in their road. And the 5 kings of Sodom and Amorah and Shinav and Amad and
King of Admar.
the king of Admah and Evar, the king of Sevaim, and Bara, the king of Sodom, and Barash, and Barash, the king of Amara, and Bela, the king of Soor. They all went out to meet them, and they all joined together in the valley of Siddim. And these 9 kings made war in the valley of Siddim. And the kings of Sodom and Amorah were smitten before the kings of Elam. And the valley of Siddim was full of lime pits. See, this is over here by the Dead Sea. It was full of lime pits. And the kings of Elam pursued the kings of Sodom. And the kings of Sodom with their camps fled into the lime pits. And all that remained went to the mountains for safety. And the 5 kings of Elam came after them and pursued them to the gates of Sodom. And they took all that was there in Sodom. They plundered all the cities of Sodom and Amorah. And they also took Lot, Abram's brother, and his property, and seized all the goods of the city of Sodom. And they went away. And Unuk, Abram's servant, who was in the battle, saw this and told Abram all that the king had done, all the kings had done to the cities of Sodom, and that Lot was taken in captivity. So now he gonna make good on his word. He told his nephew, look, if you ever need something, holler at me. So now the king of Elam came and kidnapped Abram's nephew. It says in verse 7, and when Abram heard this, he rose up with about 380 men that were with him. Remember them guys that was with him before, them 300 men that was rocking with him from the Ur of the Chaldees? These are the 300 that went with him. 380 men that were with him. 18, my bad. Men that were with him. And he that night pursued these kings and smote them. And they all fell before Abram and his men. And there was none remaining but the 4 kings who fled, and they went each to his own road.
That goes back to the dream that Nimrod had.
Facts.
Him fleeing with the 3 other kings.
And
they told him flat out, hey, look, this is what this dream means.
Mm-hmm.
And it directly has correlations to Abram. Abram is going to do this. Abram is going to defeat you. Abram is going to make you flee with these 3 kings. Now is where it's coming to fruition.
Yep, it literally says, but the 4 kings who fled, and they went each his own to his own road. And Abram recovered all the property of Sodom, and he also recovered Lot and his property, and his women and little ones, and all belonging to him, so that Lot lacked nothing. He got everything back, plus more.
All his wives, all his children, all his little property.
Verse 9, and when he returned from smiting these kings, he and his men passed by the valley of Siddim, where the kings had made war together. And Bara, the king of Sodom, and the rest of his men that were with him went out from the lime pits into which they had fallen to meet Abram and his men. See, they ran and hid into the salt pits while Abram was exacting revenge on these kings. They was hiding, the king of Sodom, right? And it says Adonai Sadak. That would be Melchizedek.
Yeah.
And Melchizedek, king of Jerusalem, the same was Shem, went out with his men to meet Abram and his people with bread and wine. And they remained together in the valley of Melech, the valley of kings. And Melchizedek blessed Abram, and Abram gave him 1/10 of all that he had brought from the spoils of his enemies, for Melchizedek was a priest before Elohim. And the kings of Sodom and Amorah who were there with their servants approached Abram and begged of him to return their servants whom he had made captive, to take unto himself all the property. See, they thought he wanted that stuff. He didn't care. And Abram answered the kings of Sodom, saying, As Yahuwah lives, who created heaven and earth, who redeemed my soul from all affliction, who delivered me this day from my enemies and gave them into my hand, I will not take anything belonging to you, that you might not boast tomorrow, saying Abram became rich from our property that he saved. They're like, no, you're not about to be talking about me crazy.
Right.
For Yahuwah, in whom I trusted, said unto me, You shall lack nothing, for I will bless you in all the ways, all the works of your hands. Now therefore, behold, here is all belonging to you. Take it and go. As Yahuwah lives, I will not take from you a living soul down to the shoe tie or thread, excepting the expense of the food of those who went out with me to battle. Also the portion of the men who went out with me, Anar, Ashkal, Mamre, they and their men, as well as those who also had remained to watch the baggage, for they shall take their portion of the spoil. And the kings of Sodom gave Abram according to all that he had said, and they pressed him to take whatsoever he chose, but he would not. And he sent away the kings of Sodom and the remainder of their men, and he gave them orders about Lot. About Lot. See, there was a reason why Lot wasn't messed with in Sodom. Like, they messed with everybody else that came to Sodom. Abraham told them straight to their face, touch him and I'll kill you. Period. That's my nephew, which is why they didn't touch him. It says, verse 17 says, And the kings of Sodom gave Abram according to all that he had said, and they pressed him to take whatsoever he chose, but he would not. And he sent away the kings of Sodom and remainder of their men, and he gave them orders about Lot. And they went to their respective places. And Lot, his brother's son, he also sent away with his property, and he sent with him, and Lot returned to his home, to Sodom. And Abram and his people returned to their home in the plains of Mamre, which is in Hebron. At that time, Yahuwah again appeared to Abram in Hebron, and he said to them, Do not fear. Your reward is very great before me, for I will not leave you until I shall have multiplied you and blessed you and made your seed like the stars of the heaven, which cannot be measured nor numbered. I will give unto your seed all these lands that you see with your eyes. To them will I give them for an inheritance forever. Only be strong and do not fear. Walk before me and be perfect. And in the 78th year of the life of Abram, in that year, Reuel, the son of Peleg, and all the days died Reuel, the son of Peleg, and all the days of Reuel were 239 years, and he died. And Sarai, the daughter of Haran, Abram's woman, was still barren in those days, and she did not bear to Abram neither son or daughter. And when she saw that she bore no children, she took her handmaid Hagar, whom Pharaoh had gave her, and she gave her to Abram, her man, her husband, for a woman. For Hagar learned all the ways of Sarai, as Sarai taught her. She was not in any way deficient in following her good ways. In other words, she mirrored Sarai's actions on how she worshiped and all of that to a T. She took up what Sarai did.
Right.
And Sarai said to Abram, Behold, here's my handmaid Hagar. Go to her, that she might bring forth upon my knees that I might also obtain a child through her. And at the end of 10 years of Abram's dwelling in the land of Canaan, which is in the 85th year of Abram's life, Sarai gave Hagar unto him. And Abram hearkened unto his wife Sarai, and he took his handmaid, his handmaid Hagar, and Abram came into her, and she conceived. And when Hagar saw that she had conceived, she greatly rejoiced, and her mistress was despised in her eyes. In other words, as soon as she found out she was pregnant, she started looking at Sarai with a real foul miscontempt.
Well, she was already royalty. Then she turned around and was able to do what Sarai couldn't at the time,
Right.
which is conceive a child from this great man.
She had some real spite in it.
Right.
And she said within herself, this can only be that I am better before Elohim than Sarai, my mistress. Ooh, for all the days that my mistress has been with my Adonai, or my master, she did not conceive. But me, Yahuwah, has caused in so short a time to conceive by him. Woo, that's hurtful. And when Sarai had saw that Hagar had conceived by Abram, Sarai was jealous of her handmaid. And Sarai said within herself, this is surely nothing else but that she must be better than I. See, even she started doubting herself. And Sarai said to Abram, my wrong be upon you. For at the time when you did pray before Yahuwah for children, why did you not pray on my account, that Yahuwah should give me seed from you? And when I speak to Hagar in your presence, she despises my words because she has conceived, and you will not say nothing to her. Now she was being smart mouthed, and Abram wouldn't say nothing. Oh, may Yahuwah judge between me and you for what you have done to me. And Abram said to Sarai, behold, your handmaid is in your hand. Do unto her as it may seem good in your eyes. And Sarai afflicted her, and Hagar fled from her to the wilderness. And an angel of Yahuwah found her in the place where she had fled by a well. And he has said to her, do not fear, for I will multiply your seed. Well, that's interesting. This angel comes to her and says, I will multiply your seed. Not Yahuwah. It says the angel of Yahuwah found her in a place where she had fled by a well, where he had said to her, do not fear, for I will multiply your seed. For you shall bear a son, and you shall call his name Yishmael. Now then return to Sarai, your mistress, and submit yourself under her hand. And Hagar called that place of the well, Bi'ar Lakai Ra'i, which is between the Kodesh wilderness and Bereth. Verse 36. And Hagar at that time returned to her Adonai's house, and at the end of the days of Hagar bore a son to Abram, and Abram called his name Yishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when he begot him.
All right, Israel.
Yeah, the next couple of chapters, 17 is going to get real interesting because he's going to start talking about how Kittim and a couple of nations became one nation.
Absolutely. All right, Israel, thank y'all for joining us and walking with us through these scriptures. Bear with us as we get more and more into these scriptures. We're going to be going on a wild ride because I don't know if some of y'all haven't read some of these lost books, but there's a lot of information that will just blow your mind that's got a lot to do with what's going on now.
They help explain a lot of stuff that's in the Bible.
They really do.
Like things that you didn't really think about. Like why did he do this? Or why did this happen? Well, this goes into great detail to tell you why. It's kind of giving you a more rounded picture of what actually happened.
Exactly. So until next week, Israel, want to bid y'all farewell and shalom.
Hey, shalom. Remember Ecclesiastes 12 and 13. Shalom, y'all.